So first off, Dom, before we even jump into today's episode,
can we just like have a casual conversation first?
Sure. I mean, I just want to know how you're doing. You had a big night last night.
Yeah, I did. I had a very fun night last night.
Well,
to
last
say
night
the
was
least.
a bit of a celebration.
Yeah,
Do you want to
just a
tell them
bit.
why?
Well, I got a new job, which was always good.
Congrats,
probably
man.
should be broadcasting about it before I actually, go in and fill the paperwork. They always say it's bad luck to tell everyone, but I'm like, hey, I'm excited.
Yeah, man, I'm confident that you've nailed this opportunity. I think you've got it pretty locked up.
Oh, I thank you. And you should the way I celebrated. I don't think it's one of my greatest escapades, but I definitely think it's one for the ages, without a doubt.
Yeah, so basically, just so everyone knows, Dom celebrated in a way that I think Dom celebrated in such a way that I think it's like the grand poobah, or how do they say that?
The Grand Budapest? I don't know. I don't fucking know how they say that.
It was just like a celebration for the ages. Let's put it that way. So basically, last night we all ended up hanging out. Us, me and Dom, a friend of the show, Patrick Huber.
Pat Huber.
Patrick
W. Huber.
Right, as he would so aptly say after I reminded him what his Instagram name was, and then he just then he claims like he remembered it. And I love Pat for that. So yeah, we all hung out with a couple other friends last night too, and we were just playing some Risk because it's a Friday night, and what do we like to do? We like to play Risk. Even when we're off the clock, we like to think.
It's a thinking man's game.
It's a thinking man's game. Well said. And the thing about Risk is it's you can get a little loose and a little silly, but you got to have your wits about you to stay in it and be competitive.
And that is not something that I had at all.
And that is not something that Dom had. So we met up around Dom's house around 8 o'clock last night. I'd say I rolled in around like 7:50. And so we were waiting for Patrick W. Huber to get there. So, the rest of us went inside Dom's house. And like a good host, Dom offered us some pasta and some green beans. But we were pretty full. Dom just got off of work. So we're like, you know what, man? We appreciate the offer, but you eat. So, it's fine. You get off work. You just scored an awesome job. You're going to want to celebrate a bit. Dom pours himself not one, but 2 glasses of wine while we're in the kitchen. And that was only probably like a 20-minute span, which is cool because we were all thinking the rest of the bottle was going to be for when everyone else got there and we started playing Risk. But then we realized that Dom brings out the bottle to the area where we're going to go to play Risk, but he doesn't bring any glasses. And so I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, maybe they're just going to swig it out the bottle. It's a bit old fashioned, but maybe that's the kind of night that this is going to be. I mean, we're playing a very old board game, to say the least. So Dom's swigging and sipping away, and of course Patrick W. Huber is a little late, as Patrick W. Huber sometimes is. But
are we just going to call him that on the show now? Is that a thing that we're going to say Patrick W. Huber every time?
I guess we have to because of how much of a stink he likes to make about it.
Yeah.
But I think that's funny. But so Dom is, by the time Pat gets here, how much of the bottle would you say was left?
Oh, there was like at least 3/4 were gone.
Yeah, at least 3/4. And I'm going to say there was less than 3/4 left. As someone who was sober there, I can tell you that there was really barely any left. I'd say 2 solid
Thank
swigs.
God there was somebody that was sober there.
Right. And so how strong was this wine, Dom? Because it wasn't your normal
I think it was
wine.
like 13% alcohol, now that I think about it. I work at a liquor store, so but I don't like pay attention to the actual content. But hey, different items equal different alcohol content. So yeah, I didn't realize quite how much there was in there. But needless to say that by the time of where I was when we were starting to play that game, I was gone. Like, no question.
I mean, I've seen you get pretty drunk before. I mean, we're all adults. We can have a few drinks. There's no shame in that. And there's no shame in celebrating the way you want. And there was no shame in what you did last night. But what I will say is that for a highly competitive strategy game Risk, Dom had consumed so much alcohol that he was just like, fucking just take me out. I can't think right now.
I'm like, I can't function.
I can't function right now.
I'm like, I'm no good to anyone. And so this is going to be the hangover episode, to say the least.
The hangover cast.
They said that unfortunately we don't have Bradley Cooper, Ed Helms, or Zach Galifianakis here, but
right.
So this has been talking hangovers with myself, Dom, the movie nerd, and Chris, the TV nerd.
You know what sucks? Unfortunately, this isn't our PTA episode.
Oh man,
that would have been good.
That would have been good.
You got to get drunk the night before that one too.
Yeah. Wait. PTA with hangovers. Todd Phillips directed The Hangover.
Todd Phillips. I'm sorry. I get confused.
PTA and Todd Phillips?
Maybe I'm hungover.
Yeah, maybe. And you didn't have anything to drink. Jesus
I'll tell
Christ.
you what, it's Dom and I can attest that this has been a roller coaster of a day.
It's been a day. It's
Do we
been a
want
day
to just let them know?
Let's
for
let
full
them know.
transparency with our
for
audience?
full transparency. First off, this is the Talkin TV podcast. I just realized I didn't actually get a chance to say that. Welcome everybody to this episode. Hopefully this episode actually makes it through. So this is unfortunately a re-recording. It's a second recording. We our first recording of this episode, in which we will be covering the premiere episode of this latest season of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, got scrapped because Chris's laptop shit the bed.
Yep.
And so we're hoping, fingers crossed, that this episode doesn't die on us. Really, really, really hoping. Please, God, laptop, don't shit the bed. Please, we need this. We really need this.
So if you guys hear this, then hey, we made it.
We made it.
We made it.
If this episode never sees the light of day, well then, just know we tried.
We tried.
For whatever etherverse ends up hearing us, we tried.
But regardless of what ends up happening with this episode, we want you guys to know that it doesn't matter how many times we have to redo something. We are still going to bring our 110% A game to the podcast. So, Dom, I think...
We're professionals, goddammit.
Because we're professionals, goddammit. And you know what? I think, it was a bit of a heartbreak, but we did the right thing.
Just a little bit.
Here's a pro tip to all podcasters. If you suffer something that is outside of your control...
Or just anybody who does media in general, guess what? Equipment shits the bed. Literally, the rule number one that I always follow when I was making my short films. Rule number one, equipment always breaks. Rule number two, people are unreliable. Rule number three, you never have enough time.
You never have enough time. But thank God today we planned for enough time because we were able to unwind, take a breather, go get some delicious pizza, and now we're here. Talk some Lost, which I guess, hey, we're doing a Lost episode. My birthday's coming up.
Precursor, a tease, if you will.
A tease, yeah. Dom, why don't you tell them exactly how we're going to be talking about such an old show?
Yeah, well, old I feel like is a little bit of a misnomer because the show only started in 2008. But Star Wars: The Clone Wars, I think, is special to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons.
I was talking about Lost.
Oh, Lost?
Yeah, I was talking about the Lost tease.
Non sequitur. Non sequitur there. Yeah, so...
Hey, wow, but that just means you're ready to get into it.
So. I want to fucking do this. Oh, man. That angry energy course
is it going to be a good one, Dom?
Why would you jinx us like that, dude? Come on, you never ask, is it going to be a good one before you say it? Just let it know. Wait, hold on, wait. Are you actually talking about this episode, or are you still talking about the Lost episode? The pronouns game, it kills me. As CinemaSins like to say, that shit screws me up.
Either way, we have two good episodes planned for you. Yes. That's what I wanted you to say.
Absolutely.
We have two the one we're in right now.
Aha, so you admit your role. I really am just a puppet to deliver what it is that you want me to say.
Oh, no.
Damn it.
That's not
you
the
revealed
case.
yourself.
Damn,
you revealed yourself, you criminal mastermind, you.
No, but for real, I mean, you can tell that one beer that Dom had after killing a whole bottle of wine
I should mention,
night,
I had a beer as well after that. And that was when I was already gone, too.
It's not affecting you.
I'm glad it's not.
You're in the moment right now.
I'm bound. Trust me, my body doesn't feel like that. But at the very least, you guys can't tell from my tone. So
yeah, I mean, hey man, you know what? You are a trooper. Just like we've had to endure this episode. This past 24 hours has been sort of like a struggle, a struggling time for you, a trying time for you. So yeah, we're gonna save the Lost talk for when the Lost episode happens.
Definitely, but it's gonna be a doozy to say the least.
Just know it's coming. But right now, just like sort of us having to endure a lot in these past 24 hours, these characters of ours for the show that we are talking about today sort of have been through a lot in only 23 minutes. Dom,
absolutely.
Why don't you sort of introduce officially what we're talking about today on Talkin TV and sort of give a little backstory and history on this show, because you do that so damn well.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, first off, we're talking about Star Wars: The Clone Wars, with the latest season, the 7th and final season, as stated. The first episode dropped on this past Friday, February 21st. And yeah, this show is the episode just reminded me again of like what it is that I love about the show to begin with, which is again taking the idea of Star Wars, a title and a property that has become very much maligned in the last couple of years, and kind of taking it to the next step, but on an animated level, you know? So the whole story goes is that Dave Filoni, who directed a few episodes on Avatar: The Last Airbender, was hand-selected by Lucas, who wanted to do a Star Wars TV show, an animated Star Wars TV show. It started out as a movie, and then it had its initial 5-season run on Cartoon Network, ran from 2008 to 2013. I promise you guys, I can speak. And then it was unfortunately unjustly canceled by Cartoon Network, and then Netflix picked it up for an additional 14 episodes, and then it got one more season, and that was it. It was done. And then the story goes is that Star Wars got bought out by Lucasfilm. Filoni did another animated show for them on Disney XD known as Rebels, which ran 4 seasons. That was also very good. And then he went on to do The Mandalorian, obviously, as we know. We suffered through the movies. And then at Comic-Con last year, when they were promoting The Mandalorian, they also announced that that Clone Wars, I'm all turned around today, that Clone Wars would be coming back for another season. The reason why that was so powerful and impactful is because this wasn't a situation like Young Justice where it was a show that was unfairly canceled, but it only had like a 2-season run, so we hadn't gotten enough to whet our palate. This wasn't like a Firefly situation or like a Freaks and Geeks situation. It wasn't that kind of a situation. Like, we had our fill of Clone Wars. The show had 6 seasons of material worth. Well, like, we had our absolute fill.
Which is a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot. And there were a lot of episodes in those seasons too. But I'll tell you what it is. It's a twofold thing. Number one, it's the fact of Filoni never got to do the ending that he wanted to do on Cartoon Network originally. Because where the show ended on Cartoon Network, he still had like 2 more seasons worth of stories that he wanted to tell after the events that happened that capped off the show's initial run, which I won't spoil for you here because it's incredible. It's one of the best arcs that happened in the show. But also because it's one of those delicious types of endings for fans where you didn't really know that you wanted it because you thought that you'd already gotten its ending. But then once you find out about it, it's like, oh my God, this is the ending that I never knew I wanted, but now I really want it. And it's like, it's just that juicy little surprise, you know?
So without, spoiling anything or really going into it too deep. So what you're saying is what they did was they did end it in a way where if we didn't get the Netflix season and if we didn't get this Disney Plus season, you certainly wouldn't be feeling like you were missing out on something.
Absolutely.
But it's just that like this dude had such a passion, a fire in his heart to finish this show that he sort of is making it happen to his full vision.
100%. Well, that and also just a vast amount of fans that helped support the show. Because again, in this kind of Disney Star Wars Renaissance era, if you even want to call it that we've kind of been experiencing these last couple of years.
Resurgence, I would rather use.
Resurgence, yeah. It has gone on record that the Clone Wars is one of the most beloved, if not the most beloved kind of things to come from this expanded universe of Star Wars that kind of has erupted. And it's funny because you mentioned previously, that you were a big fan of the games, that you were a big fan of the of the games, of the comics and everything like that. And so I kind of find it funny how we both cover different areas of the expanded Star Wars canon. You cover that sect, I cover the animated TV shows. And it's so funny too now how that sect of Star Wars seems to be where the true Star Wars love can be found because it's filling a hole for us that the movies just have been unable to do. I feel like, we've complained ad nauseum about how the movies have failed time and time again to bring back just that feeling of Star Wars.
Well, dude, I mean, it's kind of all we have that isn't like fucked up or tainted by like the evil hands of Kathleen Kennedy, to be quite honest with you.
Seriously. Well, Kennedy and Iger too, but
right.
It's mostly Iger that I blame in this situation.
Like, did you know that the newest Star Wars game, which was super critically received in like such a positive way, stars Ian from Shameless, whatever his name is?
Yeah, Cameron Monaghan. Yeah, I did know that. Yeah,
that game is like a cinematic experience. It's pretty much like playing through an animated movie. To be honest with you, it's so beautiful.
It feels cinematic.
It's the whole game feels cinematic, and it's like that's what I want from the movies. Someone clearly is putting time and care into Star Wars, so why can't we get that on the big screen? And that's why
sure would be nice.
And that's what I saw in these 23 minutes that we got from Filoni on this animated TV show that was seemingly dead. This Walking Dead zombie that re-rose up is better than anything we've fucking gotten in the theaters in the past 5 years since they started putting movies out. And it's just blowing my mind because like, what is it about? Like, I mean, obviously Filoni's now kind of proving himself, to me at least, as a guy who, when he's doing something, he's going to do it the right way. He's not going to cut corners. He clearly has passion, but like, there's got to be more to that, right? Like, why is it that like all of these smaller sects of Star Wars, like the comics and the video games and like even the animated TV shows, like they're thriving, but yet the big screen is not suffering in the box office monetarily, but certainly we all know there's a disdain by the audience and the fans.
It's a couple things. I think it's a matter of one, movies are supposed to be for everybody, and anything on a mainstream level, it's like you have just that immense satisfaction that you have to satisfy, and added to that, Star Wars. We talk all big thing that's arisen in pop culture in the last couple of years is this idea of having to satisfy the fans, kind of having to check off that checklist, but this is Star Wars we're talking about. This is like the biggest media property on the planet. How do you do that? So it's that thing. I think that in some sense, a big part of the reason why all of the extended universe stuff is thriving so much is because those are still very much in niche formats, like it's not the movies,
less pressure.
So less pressure comes in. Absolutely. Because they know that the people who are going to watch or read or play or whatever, and the people who aren't. But the movies, it's a different thing because the movies are for everybody. So I think that's it. But so with the niche areas, that's where you can really get in the people who are the diehard fans who can really go in and kind of tear apart this lore and really experiment with it in new and different ways that really they can't take the risks with in the movie. So I think that has a big part to do with it. The other thing is and this is, I think, a mistake on the movies, is that if you want my solid opinion, the prequels should have been the last movies that they made. I don't think they should have tried to make the movies, you know? Because besides what we've already talked about with the movies and how, just with the mass amount of fan pressure on it, is that, but we talked about how Star Wars had no plan. But we also said that I admire Kathleen Kennedy for kind of the initial idea, which was to kind of have a different director handle each of the movies, kind of a passing of the torch almost. But it was a two-pronged thing. Obviously, one, Rian Johnson was not held accountable to what JJ set up, which was a big problem, and that showed in The Last Jedi's final product. But also, it's the fact of the parting of Colin Trevorrow also had such a massive effect on that, because literally after reading his script, because the script that him and his partner Derek Connolly wrote for the movie got released online a few weeks ago, and after reading that thing, that just like a few pages from that already told me that this is a better script than anything that I saw in The Rise of Skywalker, which again leads me to believe that The Rise of Skywalker again was a 2-week rush job, because that's what that movie feels like. And yeah, it's just, I think besides just poor management overall and way too much pressure on it that it ever should have been held accountable for. It's funny, Patrick H. Williams actually brought up a really interesting point, where to satisfy kind of everyone's need for Star Wars, you would literally have to have them like wipe everyone's brains and time travel them back to a period when the prequels were coming out, and without the internet. You know, it's basically take away the internet and wipe people's minds that Star Wars ever existed would literally be the only way to actually satisfy them with everything that they're looking for with Star Wars. And so you take all of that into account, and you just really you had something that was kind of doomed from the start.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, a little bit of what we're saying is, like, we're talking about Star Wars. We're not talking about some schlock, right? We're talking about, like, the pinnacle fucking, like, space opera that everyone and their grandmother knows. Like, even if you've lived under a rock your whole life, maybe you've only ever watched Law & Order, like, you're that kind of person, or you only watch King of Queens reruns, you know what Star Wars is. Like, everyone knows. So there's big shoes to fill. But the thing is, man, and this is where it really pisses me off, because, like, you can have more movies. That's where I disagree with you, but let's stop telling a story about the same family. This is a goddamn galaxy. There's multiple races of aliens that figured out how to go from planet to planet, and they even, like, freaking conquer, and there's, like, their own civil wars on these planets, which you get from all the extended universe material. So take some of that. And that's why I actually found, and I'll let them know right now, the listeners being, I honestly didn't really listen or watch rather any of the animated shows until this episode. I wasn't going to watch it until we decided to do this podcast on it. So it was a little bit of homework, but it was like that homework assignment that you really got something from it. Cause I was like, damn, like, I wish I watched this sooner. This was very pleasant. And I think it's because we're focusing on, like, different characters in the same setting that we know. We know this time of Star Wars. We've had the prequels. But it's just refreshing to see, like, the little man's approach through the war. Like, you know, they're getting orders from Anakin and Mace Windu, but these are the people that go out and do those orders. We're not just seeing the control room or the Jedi sword fights. It's sort of like, you know, like, for example, 1917, following the soldiers through the thick of it. It's a very interesting medium, and it was very immersive, and they accomplished more than I've got out of Star Wars in 23 minutes than I got out of all of the past movies.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because again, it's a point that I brought up a lot on our Mandalorian episodes, which is that as much as Filoni disdains the clone troopers, like, you could see it all. The stormtroopers. You could tell it was all over the Mandalorian. Filoni despises the stormtroopers. He fucking loved the clone troopers. And that was, again, just part of the magic of the Clone Wars, which is, like you said, being able to expand on the idea of Star Wars in a relatively niche territory, but also to the point where now the Clone Wars is, and the kind of the micro universe that it's set up all within the already grander overarching existing Star Wars universe has allowed the original characters that popped up into that to become arguably just as iconic as some of the most iconic characters. Like, to me, Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex are on the level of, like, Anakin Skywalker, Master Yoda, Luke Skywalker, all of those guys. You know, they are on that level to me. And the one thing that kills me is, obviously, since it's animated, you know, the mainstream audience will never kind of get to know them the way that they know all of the mainstream characters. You know, like, everybody knows Darth Vader, everybody knows Luke Skywalker, everybody knows Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I'm like, sorry, Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex, to me, are characters who deserve to be on that level, because that's just how good the character work and the storytelling is. And it's funny that you mentioned that the transition from Last Jedi to Rise of Skywalker, which is because, and you know, just the amount of schlock and crap that we had to deal with, because because you were mentioning this nostalgia before, because it's kind of really similar to what happened to the original trilogy in a weird way. But the thing that really showed with Rise of Skywalker above all else is another thing that Patrick H. Willems brought up on his most recent Star Wars video, which is that it once again proved ultimately, again, now Disney proved again what George Lucas proved back in the day, but I would say to a worse extent now, which is that they're only concerned with Star Wars besides just wanting to sell it as a product was with nostalgia. Like their only goal with it was nostalgia. But even with that, I'm like, okay, that's fine. Because you made The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens was nothing but nostalgia. And that's what part of why I like that movie still so much. But what you could still have that. Just make the fucking story good. And it wasn't. You know?
No. Yeah, Palpatine coming back to me wasn't nostalgia. It was more fanfare.
Not to mention the fact that if you think about it, it kind of weakens the original Star Wars movies by default. Because it completely undoes Vader's whole sacrifice and makes it pointless.
Everything Luke was working towards is now null and void. And so, you know, like that's the thing. And that's, okay, so this is a big thing I want to touch upon, right? It just seems that like in these 23 minutes that we got from Filoni and his creative team, there was already 10 times more love and care, appreciation, understanding of this source material than we've gotten in the past 5 years of cinema. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're
like,
not at all.
So how is this sloppiness? I mean, obviously they're raking it in at the box office. So Kathleen Kennedy, air quotes, is doing her job. But I mean, how are we as the fans accepting this when we have this brilliant masterpiece of 23 minutes?
I don't know. Like that's the thing that drives me nuts is that it would be one thing if we didn't live in the age of the internet and we didn't have all this extra stuff. We didn't have the comic. We only had the movies, and then The Rise of Skywalker comes out. Then I would understand it because I'm like, okay, it's only one of like however many Star Wars movies there are. I get it. It sucks, but whatever. But I would understand. I'd be a little bit more understanding of how people like that. But we're in an era where we have gotten great Star Wars time and time again. I'm sorry, we are unfortunately now in an era where not only is there no excuse to fuck up like this, but quite frankly, there's no reason to either. Because we have too much other good shit that is proven time and time again what is good. And also, you're dealing with a hyper-aware audience, you know? You're not just dealing with regular, average movie-going audiences. You're dealing with an audience who is primarily very self-aware of almost every single trope that has come before that, specifically with this genre, with this series, and is actively on the lookout for those tropes in order to critique it, whether they realize it or not.
I know, man. It's just like you have the ability to go on Twitter or Facebook and see what people are saying about your movie. I mean, and I'm not saying sacrifice your creative vision. I'm saying take a look now and see what you've accomplished in the past 5 years and just look at how already people are so over the moon about like this one episode, this 123 minutes in comparison to the rest. It's almost disrespectful to like all that George Lucas worked to build, because there's a reason like when it comes to Star Wars, like I take such pride in talking about it because it's not just a movie. It's not just like it's a part of my life. Like I kind of define some of who I am as a creative person because Star Wars got me to take film and say, you know what? Maybe this is more than entertainment. Maybe this could be something that motivates me, that inspires me to get out of bed and create something. And I think if I'm the only one in the world that has had that happen to them because of Star Wars, then I must be a very special person. And I know that that's not the case because millions of people have been inspired by Star Wars. So it's like almost just disrespectful in a way to see like that we have to search for these abstract mediums to get like what we really want from it, like the comics or the games or the animated.
But that's not to disrespect these mediums, because again, if anything, the fact that these mediums are proving now that they're better than the movies, I think is honestly kind of funny. Kind of funny and almost kind of insane too, because the other thing, and the reason why I've always gravitated towards animation, even now, again, a medium that has traditionally, again, been looked down upon and just being said, oh, that's only for kids, because just specifically, you want to look at this show. This show is one of the prime examples that shows, hey, not only can you do something that's both for kids and adults, you know, because we have adult cartoons, but in my mind, most of them are bad. Family Guy stopped being funny years ago. South Park is still only about half funny, but with them, it's like, I can only really watch it like every once in a while. I can't watch it too much of it, like batches in a row, or else it'll get repetitive. I really did like Archer and BoJack Horseman. Those two really showed me like something different that you could do with that genre. But the thing about animated programming is that there's so much more room to experiment. You know, the part of the fun of media, of cinema in general, is the experimentation aspect of it. So the fact that you have this entire subgenre kind of hand drawing and creating characters literally out of nothing, to me, it's the pinnacle and the foundation of cinema, creating characters literally from nothing by drawing them pen to paper and have them sometimes be more rich and compelling than live action characters. Again, the irony here being that most of the characters in this show were also in the prequel trilogy, more compelling than the characters that I saw in the actual prequel trilogy, a live action Star Wars series.
I mean, I'll tell you right now, whoever's playing Anakin in this short 23-minute episode gave a better performance than Hayden Christensen. I'm not even trying to be like a sly person.
Matt Lanter made Anakin Skywalker a compelling character. Like that's one of the few brilliant things about this show that they do, which is, again, you have so many of the prequel characters who came off as just these dry, robotic characters with so little like life or joy to them, and they feel like rich characters. So you see those, so you see that, with Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mace Windu. You get to see all of these other background characters, with the Jedi. You actually get fully expanded upon arcs, and you actually get to see them. Plo Koon specifically, who famously Filoni has stated that is his favorite Jedi. As you see, that's the reason why he places him in kind of that role within the show, as Ahsoka Tano's the person who brought her to the temple. Kit Fisto, his solo episode, Ki-Adi Mundi, Aayla Secura, Luminara Unduli, all of these other Jedi that were basically background characters actually get to see some arcs and resolution. Not to mention the fact that if you were talking about the everyman struggle, you want to just get into the clones and how much he loves them. The fact that each and every single one of these clone troopers is voiced by the same guy, but that you would not confuse them for each other at all.
Oh, not at all.
Not
the
at all.
Performances, man.
The performances are so fucking good.
Yeah, and not at all is it. I mean, when I say abstract, it's just because when I think of Star Wars, I still think of major motion picture. And I'm thankful every day that we have amazing comic runs, that we have amazing video games, amazing, animated TV shows, because without these things, I would have such a disdain for something that really inspired me as a creative, and that'd just be very sad. So I guess I kind of want to know how you feel about this then. Should we stop putting our faith in the movies then, and maybe even embrace these smaller mediums even more, just so we can keep getting Star Wars that is like good and thoughtful?
I mean, my whole thought process is that it's not that I've lost faith completely in the movies. Because I think, just to say that, I think that's an inherently dumb statement, because we're going to watch them regardless, just because at the end of the day, just because we want to see how they are.
Right.
Because it's part of that franchise with Star Wars. But what I'm doing from now on is I'm kind of treating it. And the good thing is that because of what my relationship with Star Wars is, my whole thing is my love for Star Wars. I liked all the movies when I was a kid. I liked them. I watched them over and over again. I've really, really enjoyed them. But I would never say I was like that diehard fan of Star Wars, where it's like a Star Wars thing shows up and I'm like, oh, I want to see it tomorrow. Just because it's like, oh, it's that thing that I had when I was a kid. For me, the thing that made me begin to love Star Wars was the animated TV shows, and that was kind of what gave me my love for Star Wars. So the fact that kind of the movies that don't live up to that, my whole thought process on them going forward is, to me, they're just movies. It's not, I'm not looking at them as like, oh, I have to watch it because it's a new Star Wars movie,
Yeah.
Which is kind of what my thought process was going into The Rise of Skywalker. Now, granted, that just show you how terrible I thought that movie was, where I was already bracing myself to get hit with a bad movie. And it was so much worse than I could have possibly thought.
People were laughing in our theaters.
Yeah, people were laughing in our theater.
I guess you're right, man. I think I'm just gonna not take it so seriously,
with a grain of salt going forward,
because we have amazing things like these comics, these movies, and this TV show. So with that being said, I mean, we've certainly told the audience that you thought it was amazing too, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I love this episode.
So why don't you tell us, because you've been with this show from the beginning.
Yeah, I literally watched the show at the beginning. It's so funny.
So what did this mean to you, and what did you think about it as an episode?
Well, I mean, my history with the show, again, I'm one of the few people that watched it from its inception. It's actually funny because the whole thing is that I actually took a break from it because of Cartoon Network schedule and my school schedule as I grew up and everything, where
life happens.
Yeah, life happens. I was about 11 when the show started. I was about 15 when the show finally went off the air on its Cartoon Network, but I binged all the rest of it on Netflix later on, and I loved it. And the thing that made this show so special to me, besides, again, that it was Star Wars, and it was the thing that made me fall in love with Star Wars, is my brothers and I, we used to have this ritual where, we'd always come home from swim practice. We'd always make sure, that was in our DVR days, in the late 2000s before we got rid of cable. Before we got rid of cable and streaming service. How crazy is that? Like, at one point, we're going to sound like grandpas, and we're going to be like, back in those DVR days.
Dude, I forget what DVR even looked like.
Right?
So,
well, to us, it was just a cable box. Like, I still remember what it looked like. But
yeah, I guess there was a little button on your remote, but point being, that's so antiquated now.
I know, right? But the whole thing is that, we would have our thing where we would record all our shows that would air on Friday nights, because Friday nights we would have the big batch, whatever Pokemon show was on at the time. We were really into Bakugan, Ben 10, and there was one other that
Grim
I'm currently
and Grim Adventures?
No, I'm talking late 2000s, like 8, 9. Those are like mid 2000s. But And Clone Wars was one of them. And so the whole thing is that, we really bonded because we loved watching that show. And my youngest brother, too, is also still really into all the animated stuff that we were into, and we still kind of nerd out about that stuff whenever he comes back. We were talking to, like, he was as ecstatic as I was last year when we found out that that DC Universe was bringing Young Justice back, because that was another one of our favorite shows when that was on the air. We both love the animated Transformers stuff. Bet from the 90s shows, he likes Cybertron a lot more, but I like the Beast Wars saga a lot more. But we both fucking loved Transformers Prime, and Star Wars was another thing, with the animated shows that we're really bonded over. And he watched all of Rebels. I've only seen a few episodes of Rebels, which was Filoni's sequel series, but it's so funny too, because a couple weeks ago when he was home for his winter break, I heard him talking about the finale of season 2 of Rebels, which might be my favorite episode of the entire run of Rebels, which is the episode where Ahsoka, years later, after Anakin has become Darth Vader, confronts him for the first time ever. It's the first time she's seen him since the events that ended season 5 of Clone Wars.
Okay.
And the way that he was talking about it, I'm like, holy shit, that's the way, like, I would talk about something. And so it was a really cool moment. I'm like, yes, I've taught him something. But yeah, and it's just, to me, it's like that. Everyone kind of has like their moment with Star Wars of like bonding with their family over it, and for me, it's that's this show, and that's kind of one of the reasons why like might be my favorite Star Wars property.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's watching A New Hope with my mom in our old house in the Bronx. My early years, she sat me down, and there was a whole summer where she was like, "Look, if you're gonna be, an American, you need to understand like some of the great things that this country has done in entertainment." And we watched Rocky, we watched Star Wars, we watched Alien, and Star Wars made the biggest impression out of all those classics. So yeah, I get that. There's a huge sentimental attachment that comes with Star Wars because it's just so foundationally built into our pop culture zeitgeist, So with that being said, someone who obviously, this seems to be like, this is my Star Wars Battlefront, this TV show to you.
Absolutely.
This is like your like outside of the movies.
This is my shit.
That title that really like you have your personal connection in this. So did they do it justice with this comeback episode of season 7?
100%. Like this was everything. Literally no joke. Watching this episode, seeing all the callbacks to the previous season, just the visual look, the minute that it opens up, literally no joke. This is how good this fucking show is. The opening crawl, with like the logo going back into space with the Kevin Kleiner score, who I think also, I forgot to mention this before, I think does the best rendition, like John Williams cover without actually emulating John Williams.
The score was great.
It's really good.
The tone of this whole show, the visual, the sound design, the score, everything just worked to make this episode even stronger than it would have just been if we just had dialogue and visuals.
Yeah, it's so good. It's funny. It's one of the things that I criticize Michael Giacchino's score a lot for in Rogue One, which is the trying to emulate Williams without actually doing it properly. But yeah, like the seeing the moments with Rex and Cody, and with him holding the picture and kind of pointing out, because that was even a callback in and of itself, because there was this one underlying kind of sub arc throughout the show of where Rex and Cody kind of teamed up with these younger clone cadets in the first season, and then throughout the show you were following them, and it was one of the things where you kind of forgot about until one of them died, and throughout the show each one of them got picked off, and so seeing Rex kind of holding the picture, kind of reminiscing, it broke down like I think one of the most fundamental things that the show did so much better, that picking up from the prequels, which again, establishing like identity crisis, fleshing them out as human beings, PTSD, because a big question that gets asked a lot is what are the clones gonna do after the war ends, and that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And literally to the point where it affects them later on down the line of Rebels, and just seeing that, it was like, I'm like, oh my god, like this is almost bringing a tear to my eye. Like, yeah, it was reminding me of all the shit of what I loved about this show so much to begin with.
Well, it also made them human though, right?
Yes. Oh my god.
Because in the movies they clearly are just
they're not even characters. They are, once again, like every single character in those goddamn prequels, they are props to deliver Lucas's fucking awful dialogue in those movies.
But Lucas was a part of the original inception of this. So,
right.
I mean, I guess it just shows that, like, this Filoni guy...
And had a big active part in the show's continuing run. Where, like, all of the stories, like, it was him and Filoni. Like, almost every single one of these stories he contributed to actively.
So what is it about Lucas, then, that he needs someone else to be there with him? Like, for example, we were speaking in our episode that got deleted, so we'll keep it quick. Basically, Dom and I had sort of agreed that, like, if we just objectively compare Indiana Jones to A New Hope, the first movie installment of both of those trilogies, one, he's collaborating with Spielberg being, Raiders. A New Hope was entirely his own, and they're both amazingly strong movies, but if we're just going to be objective, I mean, we both said that Raiders of the Lost Ark like it's a stronger screenplay, is stronger.
I think Raiders is a stronger movie, and it ultimately just comes down to, again, it's a conclusion that everyone came to after the prequels, which is George is best when he's working with other people taking his stories and kind of putting their own spin on it. You know, the thing that made the original trilogy so great is that he had other masters of their craft working with him. You know, he had Ben Burt for the sound design, Williams for the score, his wife obviously helping him with story control and editing. Literally to the point where, again, this is the thing that everybody seems to graze over, but Lucas didn't direct Empire or Return of the Jedi. His college professor and good friend Irvin Kershner directed Empire Strikes Back, and that's also the movie that he had the least involvement with. Again, he had Kasdan writing the script for those two. I believe he only contributed with the story. He has the least involvement with Empire, which is why people still regard Empire as being the best one, you know? And then when he has full creative control, you get the prequels, which is where, again, I think Lucas's problem is that he has these amazing stories, but his problem is he doesn't really understand how to convey them through typical human manner, which is what, and that's fine for the purposes of creating an alternate world. Like you definitely don't feel like you're watching anything resembling anything here on this planet when you're watching those Star Wars prequels, which is good. But it gets to a point where it's like you don't even feel like you're watching human beings, and that takes away. It detaches you from it, you know, because the whole love of watching movies comes from your ability to relate to the characters that you're watching, kind of place yourselves in those shoes, and that's something that the prequels are sorely lacking.
To me, what I'm getting, and I agree with all that, what I'm also getting to add on to that is really like, and that's why I think film sort of has to be a creative art form, because for as much as George Lucas brings to Star Wars, too much of George Lucas almost has him stepping on the series' toes, because like, dude, he without him, we wouldn't even have this whole universe to be on like our 5th episode of the podcast about. He is brilliant. You can't say he's not. He's a world builder though, first and foremost. And so he needs people like Filoni who care about the title, who want to make something compelling inside of it. And that's why I think that I feel so much stronger about this 23-minute episode than I do any of the movies in the past 5 years. And it blows my mind, man. But like, you know, sometimes having the person who can get the greatest dollar amount really just out of the title, being Kathleen Kennedy, getting the job to run the Star Wars branch of Disney. I mean, yes, she did her job. She made billions of dollars with this new Disney Star Wars run, but at what cost? Because like really this series it's the franchise is so diluted now, but you know what? I have hope. I have hope in this Clone Wars. This 23-minute Clone Wars episode has given me hope, Dom. So do you agree with all that? Like, am I just crazy about bringing her into this?
100%. No, again, it's the whole thing that we talked about, which is where that I keep talking about with Kevin Feige, which is where he's the only producer money man that I've seen that has a creative, I'll say, direction and edge for these characters, which is not something that I have seen from any other producer. Like, I have never seen a producer have a thought process and a plan, a creative plan, and a love for those sets of for that set of characters that you see in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in any other franchise, you know? And that is just very clearly the care that Kathleen Kennedy did not have. You know, she treated it like a product, like a good producer. She just was making movies that had a strong IP to make money. That was her first goal. That was her only goal. And she did her job. The movies made a lot of money. But in terms of the lasting power, I'm sorry, but how sad is it that fucking the prequels are going to get more remembrance down the line and in a way more love down the line than any of these fucking movies, I think, will. I think
kind of been happening, though.
I think it is. It's happening right now. Yeah. I think Rogue One stands out because it follows a lot. And the reason I think also why I love Rogue One so much, and why a lot of the people who like Rogue One is, I think it feels just niche enough. So it kind of has the same appeal that the Clone Wars and a lot of the expanded universe stuff does. To me, it's the only one that actually does. And I think The Force Awakens will, because I think that The Force Awakens is kind of the only one of these new movies that actually was able to kind of embody what Disney was going for, which was the nostalgia approach, but actually do it right. Kind of being that ode to nostalgia through the viewpoint of younger characters. And I think the younger characters were compelling enough to make that story feasible, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think so. Yeah, I mean, the niche sections of Star Wars really are working right now.
Yeah, like that's what's carrying the franchise.
Yeah, that smash hit video game we just had. I'm sure this is going to be a smash hit. I mean, that episode was just 100%. Dynamite. And so I guess like really what we need is, as much as I hate to say it, like less Skywalker and more like different stories.
Which is what people were screaming about from the beginning. That was again another one of the biggest criticisms of Rise of Skywalker is, besides blatantly undoing everything that The Last Jedi did, again, one of my favorite parts and this was everyone's, like, of all the criticism that The Last Jedi got, this was pretty much something that everyone agreed on, which was that was the first fucking mainstream Star Wars movie that finally said, okay, this doesn't have to be a movie about warring bloodlines, and only people that are a part of this one fucking family can, like, be the most powerful in the galaxy and the chosen one, you know? Is that this is something that can be shared amongst everyone, which, again, is what I thought this trilogy was going to be building towards, which is what I was looking forward to, is the fact of, which again kind of metaphorically speaks to that, oh no, Star Wars is not just for this one group, Star Wars is for everyone. That the Force is not a gift that is exclusively reserved for the Skywalkers, that it can be spread out amongst everyone. And that's what I thought it was going for. And then, not at all. Nope, it was just, the nostalgia, just this one family, that's all Star Wars is, that's all Star Wars can be, you know? Which is so insulting when all of these other side products have proven time and time again that no, that's not what Star Wars is, and that's not what Star Wars can be.
Damn, Dom, I'm a little sad right now after you just said that. Do you want to know why?
Of course. You know I always do.
Because, like, that was so...
I'm right?
Yeah, but then here's what that made me realize, okay? Because that was 100% right. But, so we have this little bright spot in this Clone Wars series, this 23-minute savior that is seemingly the knight in shining armor, the torchbearer of the Star Wars franchise right now, but that's a final season. What happens after this is done?
Yeah, that is the one sad thing.
Where are we going to go?
Yeah.
I mean, you know how I feel about The Mandalorian. You felt a little stronger about it, but we both realized it wasn't perfect.
Yes, I'll still admit that as much as I did enjoy that show, it's not perfect.
So now I'm really scared,
Oh,
dude.
come on. Don't do that. Look at it this way. Look at it this way. You have 6 seasons worth of episodes to hold you over until then. And trust me, it's going to be some good stuff.
I know, but
and also get ready for some deaths, dude, because the deaths in this show hit hard and they do not hold back.
Yeah. So this does pretty much everything the movies were too afraid.
Oh my God, and the lightsaber fights too. I forgot to mention that. That's the other thing, is that I never thought I was going to get anything that kind of rivaled me, because to me that's the one that the prequels did right unequivocally, is that to me, with the exception of like the original trilogy had the emotional moments to back up the non-choreography, but to me like the choreography in the prequels, those fights are brilliant, and it's still like large part of the reason why I love watching the prequels. That Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Darth Maul fight is no, that's the reason why I love the Phantom Menace for so long. But the lightsaber fights in this, oh man, they rival some of the movie fights. Like with the emotion that goes into it, with the choreography, the swordplay. Again, from an animated TV show, that is the power of this show.
Dude, I mean, animation and we're good friends, so it's not that I'm usually ever off-put by it, but I more so gravitate towards live action any day of the week. But let me tell you, in this 23-minute episode that I've seen alone, and again, that's all I've seen so far of this series, folks, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to try my damnedest to watch the entirety of this series for when we do the finale 12 weeks from now, because the action felt so real. The sound design, the score, the dialogue, it wasn't just kiddie dialogue. It was like, holy shit. I mean, are these soldiers going to make it out alive? It was intense. It
felt like a behind enemy lines Gallipoli fucking Saving Private Ryan situation.
100%.
Like, it really did. And I'm glad that you actually brought up the way that the action was shot in the animation, because it's something I've been noticing a lot too with a lot more animated products, which is, I don't want to say they look more realistic, because that kind of breaks into uncanny valley territory, but like they have textures and layers of them now. Like the lighting, there's lighting in this, you know. Now obviously, you know, there's a big difference between the Cartoon Network and money and the Disney money as far as that goes. But still, like, there's differences with the lighting, the shading, the characters. Like they have more defined features now, you know, to the point where it's like the atmosphere, you can almost like live and breathe in it. And I was seeing that with a lot of animated movies last year. And it's funny because a buddy of mine that I went to school with actually had an internship at DreamWorks 2 summers ago, where he was actually in some of the rooms where they were doing some of the final visual edits on the third How to Train Your Dragon movie. And he said that they were like, yeah, they had a technology where they could add lighting techniques and like smoke and shadow stuff into this animation, and it's showing across all platforms, and the look of this was gorgeous. And like with the action, like I felt like at certain points, like I was on a first-person video game shooter, like the way that the Bad Batch was moving throughout, like,
and you know what? You're not really a video game guy, and you saying that is 100% accurate. So I just want to let you know, like,
oh, thank you.
That yes, because you're right. Because the thing about this show that really impressed me above and beyond is just how strong the vision felt. Whether or not they knew what they were doing, they made you feel like, hey, you're here to experience what we want you to experience, and we hope you like it, because this is the clear-cut vision.
Absolutely.
There was, you know, it didn't feel like watching like Fantasy Island, where what the fuck is going on.
God.
Whether or not you like Clone Wars, there is clearly creative intent, and you know I'm big on that. You know I really appreciate when people take time with their art. And I gotta say, like, I noticed a lot of subtleties that were very reflective, almost of doing your homework in a sense. Like, you know how in the original Star Wars movies, there's all those beautiful establishing shots, right? The camera pans down from space, and then there we are, right there on fucking Tatooine, you know? Like, we are just getting the world through show, don't tell. And so to do that in this animated format and have it be beautiful and have the backgrounds pop. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but when they're sitting around that campfire and he's like, we're going to call it in and the 6 of us are going to go and you're going to stay behind. In the background, there was like this giant creature that sort of like was walking off in the
I didn't
distance.
even notice it.
Yeah, it felt so alive,
yeah,
man.
It's everything that you love about Star Wars.
It's everything I wanted from the movies that they couldn't do back in the old days because they were limited. George Lucas was limited in the 70s and all that. But it's everything they should have done, I think, in these new trilogies. It felt like a living being. And that is why I think that if you have a hesitation about animation, or if you're like, but it's a kid's show. No, you need to watch
not
this
at all.
Like
if nothing else, like literally no joke. Like I recommend this is completely a show for everyone. And like, if we could just talk about the Bad Batch real quick. Before we get out of here, I mean, the basic plot of the episode is, again, it's as basic as you could get. Like, Rex and Cody decide to go ask the permission of the Jedi to go on a behind enemy lines mission in order to destroy a droid signal that's broadcasting to the droid armies. And because the droids are now in a position in the war, again, we're only a few months out from Revenge of the Sith, where they're actually being able to anticipate some of the clone attack patterns, and it's actually messing with their strategy a lot. And so they team up with this group of renegade malformed clones called the Bad Batch, which are established early on is that not all the clones who come out appear perfect. A few of them are born with deformities, but this is a group that kind of got together and kind of to use their own deformities against them to create one badass Black Ops unit. You got the leader who kind of has this extrasensory still. You got the sharpshooter, you got the tech guy, and you got the big burly muscular guy who's kind of dumb but like makes up for it. And there's a scene where these 4 throw down and go headfirst against an army of droids. Literally, the big guy just lifts up a fucking piece of metal and they drop shit. They fucking go ham, and it's awesome. Like it reminded, like that was the other thing too that I love so much about this show. The action was off the chain. And that's just, again, the capabilities of what animation can do that you're unable to do in live action. You know, there's only so much you can do with that highly coordinated stuff before you start to see the CG edge and body doubles and it starts to look cartoony. But here that doesn't matter, you know, because you know you're watching a cartoon.
Dude, it was badass. The Bad Batch are a badass group of fucking characters, man. The last thing I will say before we we start wrapping this thing up is that the one thing I did love probably the most about The Mandalorian was being able to start my Friday morning off with just like a nice little like precursor to the weekend, you know, get up early, watch something Star Wars before you get to your work for the day. And I didn't really look forward to watching The Mandalorian, but I was doing it and it was already a nice way to start my day. Start my Friday off with something Star Wars. Now I can't wait for it to be Friday. I can't wait for only off this 23-minute episode alone. I can't wait to see more of the Bad Batch. I can't wait to see what happens with like Cody and the rest of the gang. You know what I mean, dude? I feel like I'm a part of the gang, dude.
Yeah, definitely.
How did they do that in 23 minutes?
Because that's what happens when you have somebody that actually fucking cares about your product.
Dude.
Yeah.
Too true, man.
Yeah, and like real quick, like just just like seeing Rex hold the photo of all of his stormtroopers. And the other thing too that we didn't get to mention is that one, and again the twist at the end of the episode is that he finds out that one of those deceased stormtroopers, Echo, who for any Clone Wars episode, for any diehard Clone Wars fans who are listening, died at the during the episode where they had to rescue Even Peel from this place called the Citadel. I don't remember which planet it was on. He died when one of the ship cargoes exploded, and finds out that he might be alive because they found out that the broadcasting signal and the attack patterns that the droids were intercepting and using were plans that that Rex worked on with Echo back in the day. So just seeing that, like, just for me as a diehard Clone Wars fan, seeing those callbacks, I'm like, oh man, like I'm a big fun thing on the internet has been to shit on movies that do callbacks, but trust me, there's a reason why callbacks are so rich and juicy when done right. Because, oh boy, that was amazing.
Yeah, I guess what I'm learning, and I can't wait to go back and meet Echo and sort of work my way through this series.
Echo, Fives, all those guys. I miss those guys, dude. I miss them.
I can't wait. It's gonna be
animated characters. I miss animated characters the way I would miss like best friends.
I already know it's gonna be great, man. But I guess what I'm learning is sort of like, you know, callbacks may have been done a little too much, but they're obviously a technique that has value and has payoff, right? Or else you wouldn't just be praising it like you would. So again, like really, it's sort of like don't do something unless you really care about it, right? I mean, yes, paychecks are fine and we all need to make money, but like Filoni clearly loves what he's doing right now. Because, God damn it, that was 23 minutes of brilliance.
Yes, he loves each and every single one of these characters. They are all so well crafted. The stories are fun. They're excellent. They're heartwarming. They're heartbreaking, too. Like I said, there's a lot of tragedy. Again, the beautiful thing about kind of this intersected woven universe is, again, you get brilliant moments like the season 2 finale of Rebels, which, again, that's a completely different show, but how it calls back to what happens in this show and just, like, the emotion that rolls off of that. Again, You get that from like a 23-minute animated show. And to me, it's like epic storytelling level on the level of the original Star Wars trilogy.
So before we get out of here, since we've brushed up on Rebels a few times now, why don't you just, like, for any listeners who don't know, like, how do these shows connect?
Yeah, so basically the basic premise is Clone Wars takes place within the 2 to 3 years that occur between Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith. Whatever that is in the timeline. And then obviously, you have Revenge of the Sith and the whole toppling of the Republic for the Empire. And Rebels takes place over the last 5 years that lead into A New Hope. The thing is that Rogue One, which takes place right before A New Hope, Rebels ends shortly before the events of Rogue One happen, and also because the Ghost, which is the ship that's in Rebels, takes place in both the Battle of Scarif in Rogue One and eventually the Battle of Endor from Return of the Jedi. And the cool thing about that is the main 6 characters in Rebels end up running into a now adult Ahsoka Tano, who survived the Clone Wars, and a much older Captain Rex. So you get to see like kind of those payoffs from the Clone Wars and kind of how this is one intersected universe, and like the juicy character moments that erupt from kind of these character reunifications. Like there's a beautiful moment when Ahsoka and Rex kind of reunite because they've kept in contact, but they haven't seen each other in a while. And they have this beautiful hug, and they both kind of look at each other, and they're like, and the one's like, "You got old," and it's like, "Yeah, had to happen sometime." And it's like those beautiful moments, and you're like, "Come on, dude! Like that's amazing." And like I said, the moment when she sees Vader again, because that was always the tragic thing about the Clone Wars is you knew where it was going to end with Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah,
and another cool thing too that I wanted to mention real quick is that now with Filoni getting to do the ending that he was originally unable to do, is that now I know that the last couple episodes in this are going to take place during Revenge of the Sith. So you can kind of see like the alternate perspective from Revenge of the Sith, where that happens and how that affects some characters. That's going to be awesome.
I cannot wait.
But when Ahsoka meets Vader again, and like the line delivery and like what they exchange back and forth, and then when the fight begins, it's like it's one of those build-ups to like, no joke to me, it was the equivalent of the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan on Mustafar, which at the end of Revenge of the Sith, which I think everyone can agree is like the best thing to come out of that entire prequel trilogy. The lightsaber fight at the end of Phantom Menace being a close second, but
it also gave birth to one of the most polarizing memes of our generation. So thank God for that fight for many reasons.
But that's my
not
point.
To derail. Yeah,
right. That's my point. Is that it's reminiscent of that, like kind of the emotional charge and the build up to when they throw down, they fucking throw down, and they do not hold back, and it's awesome.
And I think because like it felt very real. Like for all that the prequels didn't do right, that tension, that drift between apprentice and master felt real. And so I haven't even seen these events that you're talking about from Rebels or anything, but your description alone, right? This Rex is an old man being very reflective and sort of looking back on his war days, and it happens to the best of us. And this Ahsoka meeting her former master now as the ultimate evil of the galaxy, like that feels more real in you just telling it to me than anything I've seen as a part of the main trilogy. And just so everyone knows, I've been referencing the main trilogy when I talk about what's been happening with Disney throughout this episode. The spin-offs are spin-offs, those,
of course,
yes, they matter, but they're also, like we've been saying, a little more niche. So the fact that, like, I don't want to say anymore because I just think people need to watch this because
they do.
Because it's just like, it's real, man. It is what we should have gotten in the theaters, but thank God we got it, like you said, some way. And enjoy it because it's all we got, and at least it's way better than not having this at all.
And not to hype you up anymore than I kind of already have, but like wait till you see, especially with like another big thing that happens with Rex in Rebels is wait till you see what happens in season 6 once they kind of reveal kind of the real root cause behind Order 66. Because, oh man, that alone, I already thought that what we got in the main run was great enough, but then you get that with the Netflix batch, and you're like, holy fuck, like, what else could this show do?
And it's all
like,
canon,
add another level. It's all canon. It's all fucking canon.
So, like, the screenwriters for the films, they, by contract, have to consider the things...
Yes. I told you, there are references to the Ghost. I don't know if you see, but literally, if you go back and you rewatch the Battle of Scarif, you can see the Ghost. And there are ships from Rebels that have only appeared exclusively in Rebels that appear in that show. And fun fact, Saw Gerrera, Forrest Whitaker's character from, you meet him in Clone Wars. You meet him in Clone Wars, and he comes back in Rebels.
Beautiful. Okay, so guys, if you were like me and you were looking for the Star Wars done right in this new decade of ours, this new streaming medium, well, we've just not been looking in the right place. So Dom, thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. And now I have to ask you, like I always do, to bring the listeners to the attention of our show. I mean, obviously, thank you guys for being here. We mean it so much. Your support is the reason why we keep going. I mean, we literally got so defeated because we lost the original episode today due to technology. And we're like, you know what? We can't let these people down because A, they count on us, and B, they support us, right?
Yep. Our first lost episode that we will never see again.
Yeah.
RIP.
RIP. But seriously, like, if you guys weren't being so supportive, I might have just driven home and we might not have, So thank you guys for being here. So Dom, what do you got to tell them?
Well, you guys will hopefully now know where to find us, but thank you again for continuing to support us through all of our endeavors. So you can find us across all social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram, Talkin TV Podcast, no G, or just Talkin TV. Insert a little apostrophe for that G. And as for where you can listen to us, Anchor, which is a free subscription service, distribution service that goes out to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Radio Public, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, and basically anywhere else that you could listen to podcasts, minus SoundCloud. We're putting up new episodes every single Wednesday morning now is when they're going up. We record on Saturdays, put them up on Wednesday, and a whole bunch of fun little interludes in between. And as for my own personal social media, you can find me at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I just put up another video this past Friday on my top 10 favorite Black Mirror episodes. But Chris, where can the good people find you?
Yeah, so you guys can find me anywhere that matters, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to be exact, at Christian Evanko. That's my first and last name. Don't wear it out. With that being said, I make music in a band called The Stash, spelled S-T-A-S-H. We just put out a song last Friday, so, me and Dom, we're busy with this podcast, but we also do other things, and we'd really appreciate it. I'd appreciate it if you went and checked out my music, and I know Dom would appreciate it if you went and checked out his Black Mirror episode amongst all the many other great episodes.
It's a good one, I think. I think I got a good rankings then.
Yeah, and I think we believe in what we do as artists, so the fact that you guys are here, I'm sure you already have, but if not, please check out my music and Dom's other YouTube venture. I also have another podcast on the same network. It's called Talkin with Andrew and Chris. It's a show about life, music, and everything in between. And with that being said, there's a lot that happens in life. There's a lot of ups and downs, but today kind of was a bright spot for me. Today showed me that, take everything in stride and learn to appreciate the good while you have it. So Dom, thank you for making me watch Star Wars: The Clone Wars, because I would have never have watched it without having to do this podcast.
You're welcome.
And Dom, I think people should start thanking you for this sign-off, because it is, if there was ever a time and place in the entertainment industry to have a sign-off like this, it is now. Dom, how do you want to have the people have their last words from us today on the podcast? What do you want to tell them?
The same as always. Watch more fucking movies, people. We out.